Welcome to the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. This is your go-to resource for personal growth, mastering communication, and influencing and persuasion techniques that will help you unleash the full potential of yourself and others. Here is your host, Alex Morgan.
Welcome to another episode of the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. My name is Alex Morgan, and I'm a master trainer of hypnosis and NLP. And on this episode, we welcome Mickie Kennedy. Mickie is the founder and president of eReleases, the small business leader for press release distribution, and it's now celebrating 25 years in business. He is an expert at helping small businesses increase their visibility and credibility, and he's here today to share some valuable insights. All right, Mickie, thanks so much for joining the show. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, no problem. It's great to be here.
Yeah, awesome. You're really into increasing visibility and credibility using PR and things like that to promote authors, small businesses, and startups. So I'm an author myself, so I was kind of curious about how you use that, let's say specifically with those three target audiences.
Right. So in the case of authors, it really depends on the type of author you are. Nonfiction tends to do okay with PR. Fiction doesn't do extremely well with PR. I have one client that just kept trying, and she did get a little bit of success with some fantasy novels, but it's rare for fiction. And I think the reason for that is so much of fiction is the story and the writing and, those sort of artistic elements that are harder to capture in a press release. And a journalist kind of needs to look at the book, and, very few busy journalists are going to go through that effort. So nonfiction does do okay. You really want to make sure that what you're talking about in the press release is the reasons for the book, why in a world of so many books, what is the perspective here, or the teachings, or what are the elements that make this book unique in the world of books, and why it should exist and why people should pay attention to it. So I think if you sort of focus on those elements, while also sharing your own, personal interest story, who you are, how you came to be this author, or, to have these skills, I think all of those are really good elements, because I think that, books do really well sort of piercing that human interest element, and journalists, building their story, because journalists like to tell a story. They really like the story arc, and so many people don't realize that. And so you really want to make sure that you have those elements in the press release, and sort of bring those forward.
Cool. Yeah, they say everyone loves a story because it really grabs at our emotions. Now, you were mentioning the reporters and everything, and I noticed on your website, under the big title, it says, we handle the difficult part, which is building the relationship with the journalists, the reporters, and all of that. Can you kind of explain, if someone wanted to, go with your services, who may be listening, what goes into kind of building that relationship and what's so important about it?
Right. So it's largely, I started, I guess around 26, 27 years ago, reaching out to journalists. And I was doing PR for a telecom research startup as employee number 3. And because I had writing in my background, even though it's creative writing, they wanted me to figure out press releases. And so I was faxing at the time, and a lot of journalists started to call and say, in the future, could you just email me these releases? And that sort of gave me the idea for eReleases. It started as a database of 10,000 journalists, and I just emailed them. I spent about a year reaching out to them, and almost everyone was like, wow, that sounds really cool. You're going to send me press releases related to my beat. This was before, journalist databases existed. And so now, I think journalists are in an ocean of email. And so you really want to make sure that you're someone that they have a relationship with, so they recognize you, filter you ideally, and don't send you to the spam pile. And for that reason, our relationships with journalists is really important. Another component that we have is a newswire distribution. All of the releases that go out through eReleases get a national distribution on PR Newswire. without having to pay $1,600, because that is the going rate for a 600-word press release going out nationally through PR Newswire. They approached me probably 10 years ago. It might even be a little bit longer, and said they liked what we were doing, supporting small businesses, and they wanted a way to work together. And they were wanting to offer sort of like local distribution only. And I really fought and said, these guys deserve national media attention as well. Is there any way we could make this work? We did. They were able to give me a rate that allows me to, offer it for about a third of what you would pay going directly to the Newswire. It doesn't hurt that we move like 10,000 releases a year, so there's a lot of volume for them. And on average, most of our clients are doing 2 to 4 releases a year.
Okay, cool. So let's say an entrepreneur, business owner, small business owner is listening to this right now, and they get these 2 to 4 press releases out there. What kind of like immediate results may they be able to see? And then more like in the long term as well, if they consistently do this, what do people typically see? I'm kind of curious about that myself.
Our service, the goal is earned media, and that's what we call it when a journalist writes about you. It's an original article written about you. They work from the press release, but it is an original article. What we don't, which isn't special, is having the press release replicated on websites. That's called syndication. That happens at PR Newswire, happens at Business Wire, but there's a whole cottage industry of websites with wire in their name. That's all they do. You get a list that your press release is on a bunch of websites. The pages they're on don't get a lot of traffic. The sections they usually are on these news sites don't get a lot of traffic. And no journalist sees you, no journalist turns you into an article. For us, we're really looking to make sure the release gets to journalists, has them consider, and hopefully turn it into earned media. What that looks like is all over the place. A lot of clients will do a release. They'll come to us with a release already written, and they don't do very well. Is the honest truth. I mean, like the most popular release we get is a new employee hire, and it's usually not a new executive, and it's usually not an industry veteran, which might warrant some media attention. In those cases, you're lucky to get like a local paper, maybe a local business magazine or business newspaper, and also perhaps a trade publication. In those instances, you're better off saving your money rather than spending it to go out on the wire, and just reach out to your local paper and send them 3 or 4 sentences about your new hire and a photo. I do the same thing with a trade publication or 2, especially if they have an on the move section where they usually have a couple sentences about people who are moving around, because that's largely the only results you're going to get from a press release like that, unless it is, new executive or industry veteran. The second most common release that we get is a product launch release where someone has a new product or service, and it largely is a formula where it's like, here's a new product, and here's a list of features, usually bulleted, and a page dedicated to the product and where you can buy it. There's no story there. No journalist is really going to be receptive to that. The things that I would recommend is go through the release and see, can you get publicly available data that might be able to anchor the need for your product? For example, let's say you're a logistics solution to help e-commerce companies, and you find, go out and hunt publicly available statistics, and maybe you find that 67% of new e-commerce companies fell in the first 5 years, largely because of unexpected costs like logistics. And here's a solution. That shows the stakes of why your product is or service is really important. And then other things that you can do to really help out with the story arc elements is have a use case study. Most people have had people try out their products and services before they go live. Share someone's story. Like, here was a company, here was their obstacle, here was the results of using the product or service, and here's a quote by them. That's a lot more of a story arc than a journalist could talk about the new product, talk about how it helped this one company. Here's a quote by them. Here's some features, and that's more rounded out. And so I think a lot of people don't take into account the fact that journalists have a job in which they have to communicate to their audience, stuff that's either entertaining or educational or, even, really delightful. just really something that they really just love. And so many of those are around stories. And if you are sending out your press release of like, we have this new product, it's important to us, we want to sell a lot, therefore journalists should just understand it's newsworthy, you're not going to do very well. So you really want to sort of look at the story arc and try to craft anything that you send out in a way that gives a lot of little elements for something that is more story driven.
Okay, so someone, let's say now they have the story driven and it's in the earned media, they have this going, they have some credibility going. How does getting this amount of PR then lead to, getting all those eyeballs on you, plus leading to sales, essentially what everyone would want? Can you explain that process a bit so
Sure.
people can really see how that happens?
Sure. So when you get earned media, it is visibility for you. A lot of people who read an article, they have this huge signal of trust. When a journalist writes about you, then you're in the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or even a small newspaper. It's like, that journalist is giving you almost an implied endorsement by choosing to write about you. It's a huge credibility boost. It sort of acts as a referral. Often people will, if there's not a link directly to your website, they'll look you up and go to your website, learn more, and often buy. The customers that come from earned media are some of the most loyal customers and the least price sensitive. They want to work with someone that they have a emotional response to, and they're not driven by, can I get this cheaper on Amazon, or is there someone else with a solution that's cheaper? They really get invested in a company and want to work with them. I am guilty of reading blog posts and newsletters and articles about like Kickstarter campaigns, and I'm like, oh wow, this is a really great story about this person. They saw this need, no one else has built this, and they're working on it. I want to support them, and often I'll click through or look them up, and if it's affordable, I'll back them. And that's the kind of thing that happens with earned media that doesn't happen with advertising. I've had clients who come to me and said, hey, we got this article, looks like we got 300 people that clicked through to the from the article to our website, and like 170 people bought. Is that even possible? Better than 50% conversion rate? And it is. The first thing I point out is not everybody who saw the article bothered to click through, but the people who did had that emotional response. They clicked through. Your product wasn't $10,000. It was like often it's a consumer product, and they just click and bought. They had that emotional response, and they want to do business with you. Here's the really cool thing about earned media. You're going to get customers like that. How many, it varies on where you get picked up, how good they are of an audience of your potential customers. But you can then take that same article and share it with your leads, share it with your customers. There's something called churn, where your customers are always thinking, we've been with these people for a while, maybe we should try someone else out this year, or consider shopping around. And if they read an article like that, they have the same emotional response. Many of them will just say, we're with the right company, no need to shop around this year. And there's always a certain percentage of your leads that don't convert. And maybe you get that article in front of them, whether it's social media or a newsletter or anything like that. They have that emotional response. And some of these that had initially said no, all of a sudden you start converting them. And that's the real value of earned media. I know that so many people have, testimonial fatigue, where testimonials don't really, give you the conversion bump that it used to. But when it comes to earned media, it still drives sales, and it really drives conversions. And it works for a lot of people. What are the responses? I mean, sometimes it's one or two articles for the average client. Sometimes it's considerably more. It really depends on what you're announcing. I have a little mini course that's free that I pitch to my clients to try to do more strategic types of press releases, and those generally have better results, and they tend to work more often than the types of press releases that don't. One example is doing a survey in your industry. Picking 16 really interesting questions to ask right now. 4 questions per page in SurveyMonkey. You can build it out in less than 10 minutes, and take that link and then go to a independent or small trade association in your industry. Don't go to large ones. They don't work with people and they get a lot of media attention as it is. But the small and independent trade associations, of which I guarantee there's dozens in every industry, pick one, ask if they'll send that to their members in exchange for you mentioning them in a press release you'll be issuing over the wire. Better than 80% of them will say yes. Sometimes you may have to massage the relationship a little bit. Like I've had some pushback and ask if they could co-brand the survey, get a little more visibility for them. I don't see a downside to that. Generally they'll send it out. You're looking for 100 responses at least. And if you don't get that, you circle back to them and ask if they can push it on their social media to get you over the hump to get that 100 number. Because generally journalists like to have 100 or more responses to have a little statistical relevance. And you're going to look at the results and figure out what were the biggest aha moments. You've asked 16 questions. You might put a weird or strange left field question towards the end of the survey. That way if they abandon it, you've still got like 75% of their responses. Look at those results and figure out what are the surprises here. What are the big aha moments? And focus on one or two of those for a press release. You're going to ignore the rest. I think you should build out a page on your website where you have all of the 16 questions and the responses, because a really good journalist will click through and see if there's another story that they could flesh out in the responses. But you're going to focus on one. You're going to make the press release about that. You're the expert. You did the survey. You're going to put an amazing quote in there about why you felt the numbers skewed a particular way, and you're going to send that out to the media. Everybody I've coached through that has done, on average, 8 to 14 articles of earned media for each survey. The least we've ever gotten is 4, but it was a very small industry, so that one might be a little bit understandable. But that's a really great pickup rate, and it's a way to really boost your visibility and be seen in your industry as an expert. It's a great way to stand out. Those are just one of the ideas. Other ideas that work that are more strategic and a little less involved is, sharing your story. What is it about you that is unique? What was your vulnerability, your inspiration, your authenticity of your path to build your business or your product or service? It's one of the reasons that everybody that appears on Shark Tank seems to share their story. It's usually a vulnerability. It could be they lost a job or they lost a loved one. They had a hobby. Could I turn this into a business or something? There's lots of different things that people lead with. And it's because, these things help humanize us. And we naturally want to do business with other people, not logos and corporations. And so that human interest element is really powerful. And it's also what drives that story arc that journalists are looking for. And it's a really great way to stand out as well.
Yeah, so you're talking about the stories and, kind of some things that are unique to the business owner, the person creating this coverage. So what are the ways that people can really use their USP or their unique selling proposition to be kind of irresistible to the media?
Sure. What is it that you do that defines you as different than everybody else? Startups are usually really good at this. They have an elevator pitch, and they can usually say in one sentence succinctly what it is that defines them as unique in the marketplace. And, having a unique selling proposition, something that you do that distinguishes you from everybody else, gives you that little bit of edge that makes journalists want to, share about you. A lot of people have what I call an imposter syndrome when it comes to getting media attention, especially if you're a small business, and they feel like this is the domain of large corporations. And what you don't realize is journalists, they're human, and they recognize that these large corporations can afford to advertise. They have to cover the Apples and Googles of the world, but they don't get accolades for that. The latest edition of Microsoft Office isn't going to get a lot of people saying great article, but if they uncover or talk about a tool or a resource that not a lot of people know about, they do get a lot of appreciation for that. People like seeing them as curators, like, wow, they've really showed me this great way to use AI that is really, valuable in a way that, ChatGPT just seems overwhelming and I don't know what to do. As a result of that, most of these journalists are putting the spotlight on smaller businesses, mom and pops. And so don't feel that being small is a disadvantage when it comes to the media attention. And in many ways, it can be an advantage because it really does, the fact that not a lot of people know about you is a reason for a journalist to sort of champion you and share you with their audience.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, I was just thinking about kind of when you were talking about this a specific industry like trade publications. So how important is it for like a small business owner to like go very specific with the coverage as opposed to maybe something a bit more broad where it's not necessarily so specific to their industry? Do you kind of have any data or results or a case study you can share about differences in that?
It really depends, what the goal is. So if you're looking for customers, are the people reading the trade publications made up of your customer base? I did a campaign for a local carpet company in New Jersey. We weren't having any luck. We were doing a press release a month because they had budgeted it. And I did advise them that I didn't think that PR was going to be the best fit for them, but they had the budget and they said, if we don't spend it with you, we're going to spend it with someone else. So I took their money, and at month 4, we had sent out 4 releases, no media pickup, no earned media. And we did a brainstorm at that point, and I went through an exercise asking them questions. And one of them was, who's your biggest enemy? And, I expected it was like Al Carpet Emporium across the street. And it was the big box home improvement stores. And they talked in great detail about why they're so bad for the carpet industry and all of the inferior experiences that people get as a result of using the big box home improvement stores. And so we built together a press release, sort of a David versus Goliath, about how they have to market against these billion-dollar companies who they know are providing an inferior experience. I told them, I don't think this is going to get in front of your customers, but I think it will do really well in the floor and trade industry. And they said, that's great. So we sent it out, and like a dozen floor trade publications picked it up, which is like the equivalent of going very viral in a very small industry. It turns out that nobody had really been talking about this. I call that in my strategy of press releases a gap in the marketplace where trade publications aren't really covering something. So it's like a blind spot. And we brought it forefront, and we did really well. We continued to use similar types of releases where we continued to talk about big box home improvement stores, but we would do certain campaigns and certain approaches and things like basically how they were marketing themselves. And we continued to get pickup. At the end of the year, they had been picked up in their local newspaper, which was great because that's their customers. New Jersey Magazine, which also is really great, but a lot of people recognize it. About 20 some, maybe closer to 30 trade publications. They put that together, printed out all of the clippings, and they put it in a book, a binder they called their brag book. And every time they went out and gave someone a quote, they would open it and say, look, we probably aren't going to come in the cheapest, but we provide a superior experience. Unlike the big box home improvement stores, our carpet installers install carpet for a living. And that's one of the little things that they talked about is they just call people with a home improvement license and say, hey, can you install carpet tomorrow at 11? And they don't ask, have you ever installed carpet before? So if you're an out-of-work roofer and you get that call, you might just be installing carpet the next day. It may not be stretched properly. It may not have the seams completely invisible. And those were the types of things they talked about. And so when they opened the book, they showed people they've been picked up in Floor Trade Weekly, this publication, New Jersey Magazine, the local newspaper. And just by adding that book and an additional 1 to 2 minute conversation as part of the sales process, they started converting 17% more of these at-home, consultations, and almost 20% bump in conversion by just adding that. The people never got a chance to read the articles. It was a minute or two just skimming, over 24 of these articles. And what it did is it told someone who's a homeowner is like, I don't know who to choose. Let's just go with the cheapest. But they're like, these people may not be the cheapest, but man, I feel so comfortable having someone who's been recognized nationally in the local paper, New Jersey Magazine. I feel like we're not going to have a terrible experience with them. And if it's $200 to $400 more, I'm very comfortable giving them my money. And that's what happens with earned media. That's just really valuable. And that's an instance of getting trade publications where your audience isn't the people who are reading it, but there's another use that they were able to use for it. I had an auto repair shop in Pennsylvania had a new domain name because their old one was tied to the Yellow Pages. I don't know how that happened, but I don't know if the Yellow Pages went away or them offering went away, but they could not get that domain back. And so they had to start with a new domain, and they were looking for authority links back to their website. And we did a survey. I think about a dozen automotive trade publications picked it up. Only about 7 of them linked back to it. And there is something called an implied link, even when there is no physical website URL pointing to you. Google has a patent for what they call an implied link, so that they can contextually tell that an article is about you. They give you credit as if there is a link from it. Within 2 months, they were ranking number 1 in their area with a new domain name. And it was, again, just targeting the automotive industry, which isn't their customer base as well. But for some people, especially B2B, these trade publications are made up of their customers, and it's really valuable to reach them. In other cases, the trade publications are just other owners, and they're not really their customer base. So you kind of want to tailor your messaging with what the goal is. If you're looking to stand out in the industry, maybe get partnerships with other people, and you recognize that those trade publications aren't going to be read by your customers, are these other goals ones that you feel are worthy? If not, you kind of want to focus to try to get publication in places where your customers are reading, whether that be newspapers or other like more traditional magazines or things like that. And there's also TV and radio. People don't talk about it a lot, but radio is still really good for people who are experts and get asked to speak on radio, as well as here we have podcasting, which is another way to reach people. So it really depends on your goals, and just making sure that your goals align with what who you're trying to reach, and how that may result in you getting in front of your customers and getting those leads and sales that you want. But sometimes the leads and sales are not as important as getting credibility in your industry or partnerships or other things like that. So there's lots of different ways to look at PR where the ROI isn't always so very obvious.
Yeah, because it's almost like you can get small wins doing other things. You mentioned a lot about like credibility, authority, being the expert, building trust. Are there any other kind of just single words that you would throw out there that you go like, wow, PR really does this for businesses?
Clout, currency, rapport, excitement, all of those things tend to go hand in hand with a lot of earned media where, people are often, bringing a new product or service or opportunity to their audience, and people are often excited, and, they see this as something really interesting, and they want to learn more.
Cool. Well, speaking of learning more, I really appreciated the conversation. I learned a lot. If people want to learn more about what you do, Mickie, can you tell them the best places to find you, and, how they can work with you and, really get this exposure and credibility?
Sure. So our website is eReleases.com. All our social media is on the lower right of the footer. You can talk to anybody in the office by chat or phone or email. I only hire editors. We have no salespeople. There's no commissions or quotas. Generally, if we feel like we're a good fit, we're honest and we tell you that. If we don't feel like it's a good fit, we do caution you and perhaps turn you in different directions. I do have that free masterclass that I talked about. It's usually for my customers, but anybody's welcome to take it. And it might be a good place to start if you're open to PR, because I think it'll help you brainstorm at least half a dozen ideas that are strategic that you could do for your business. And that's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN, completely free. It's less than an hour of video course. I'm guilty of signing up for courses and they're like 16 hours of video and I just never get to it. So I tried to make this something that would be easy to digest and really go through lots of exercises of ways in which you can get media attention that's strategic and more likely to get results than the types of releases that don't.
Yeah, I mean, when I watch a masterclass or something, that's what I want. Like, I need to take little actions like, hey, I watched this for 1 hour. Now what can I do? So it needs to give that sort of value. So I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of this. And it was really good to talk to you today.
Oh, same.
So thanks for listening. And wherever you listen to this podcast, please rate the podcast so it can get into the minds of more people. And I'd love to hear your feedback. And I hope to see you on the next episode.